Call to order the regular monthly meeting of the Ellsworth City
I'll go
Council.
back to your dinosaur.
Monday, May 20th, 2019 at 7 p.m. All the councilors are present except for Councilor Hudson, who I just talked with, and she's coming up the stairs now. She'll be here in a second. I'll wait for her before we move on to the...
You do the Pledge of Allegiance as she walks.
Well, that's why I'm going to wait. Like I just said, all councilors are now present.
Thank you.
Don't sit down, Don. Item 2 on the agenda, Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 3, Rules of Order. We run the city council meetings by Robert's Rules of Order and any other rules put in place at the organizational meeting this past November. Also at this time, I ask that anyone that has any phones, pages, anything that makes audible noise, if you put it on silent, please. Thank you. Item 4, adoption of the Ellsworth City Council minutes from the following meetings: April 15th, 2019 regular meeting, and May 6th, 2019 special meeting.
So move, Mr. Chairman. Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor? 6 in favor, and
I'm abstaining, I wasn't here.
Councilor Grindle is abstaining. Item 5, City Manager's Report. Manager Cole.
Yes, Harbor Park is now open for the season, and reportedly boats are already starting to arrive, so summer will be upon us soon. Knowlton Park will officially open May 25th, which is Saturday, just in time for the Memorial Day weekend. Another sure sign of summer coming someday. Couple other items. The roadside cleanup this year. As you know, last year was the first organized roadside cleanup, at least in recent history, and 40 bags were picked up last year. This year, due to the efforts of the Green Team, Action Team, and city staff and the Public Works folks, they estimate it came up to 250 bags this year compared to 40 last year. They did 3 one-ton dump truckloads and 3 pickup truckloads, so a lot was removed. But most of all, note the citizens, the residents of Ellsworth who stepped up, adopted roads, took on sections. We saw them come into City Hall, penciling out their piece that they were going to do. The hopes were last year when this was initiated that it would grow over time. And, 40 last year, 250 this year. I wouldn't be surprised we get up to 500 to 1,000 bags at some point. So thank you to everyone involved. Communications survey. The city staff communications team. I believe we're going live tomorrow on the website. If you go to the top of the city's homepage, you'll see a survey. It takes less than 5 minutes to participate. It's a quick survey to try to find out how people get their information, how they want to get their information, and what forms from the city. So I encourage members of the public to participate. We want a broad cross-section of the community, to guide our efforts. And on Saturday, June 1st, at the Ellsworth Middle School track is going to be Relay for Life with the American Cancer Society. A group of our employees here at City Hall have initiated an effort called City Against Cancer, and you can come in from the public and buy feet, donate money towards the effort. We've had One big sale, which I believe brought in more than $300? $400, and they're planning another one. So kudos to our staff for getting involved, and I will be with them on June 1st on the track, trying to do my part anyways. And again, it's on our website if you want to find out more information about these events and the city's efforts. And that is it.
Thank you very much. Item 6, committee reports. If there's any counselors that have attended any committee meetings in the last month that want to report on them, this is your opportunity. Counselor
I've got a
Moore.
brief one. But before we do, I'd like to thank all the people who went out and cleaned up all the trash, all around Ellsworth, but also in other towns. It really looked good. Unfortunately, some of you may have noticed that the pigs are out again. There's several places around the city where all kinds of stuff has just been thrown out.
Huh.
Can't fix that, I guess. All right, anyway, I attended the harbor meeting. And as Dave said, the harbor is open. And from everything I've heard from the folks who put their heart into getting it going, it was a kind of a wonderful thing this year because of those ice eaters. Being able to leave the docks in made it so that in a much, much shorter time, we're able to get the harbor ready for the onslaught of boats and warm weather. There was some talk going on for a few years or so about getting the Army Corps of Engineers to do a dredge to make it so that people can actually get past buoy number 4 at some point. But the Army Corps has determined, I guess officially, that there's a significant amount of contamination in the soil in the area that needs to be dredged. So we have to kind of think, if there is going to be a dredge, how we're going to dispose of that soil. So far this year, the city has collected fee money in the amount of $20,600, a little over that. So that's a pretty good start for the season. And that's about it.
Thank you very much. Any other counselors? I met with the Historic Preservation Committee last week. They are interested in doing a certified local government, or having certified local government status. And they wanted a little bit of feedback. What my impression of it was, I'm the council rep on that committee. What I thought the council might feel about it. And the way they explained it, I thought it was all good. I didn't see any downside to it. It allows for easier access to grants for both the Preservation Committee and citizens that might be interested in having their property listed on a local historic board. So they're going to still do some more research in it, and at some point, maybe by the end of this year, it will come before the council for full discussion after they have all the I's dotted and T's crossed. Item 7, citizens' comments. This is the time of the meeting that we set aside. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak on anything, to fill us in on anything that is not on the agenda, we'll give you about 3 minutes. And no action will be taken on anything because it's not an agenda item. But we will still listen. So if there's anyone, this is your time. Seeing no takers? Item 8, presentation of awards. I don't believe there are any tonight that I've been made aware of. Item 9, the consent agenda. All items in the consent agenda are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests. Then that item will be removed and considered in its normal sequence. The 3 items on the agenda tonight: Council Order Number 051901, request of the Deputy Treasurer Tax Collector to accept payments on tax-acquired timeshare units per the attached spreadsheet, and to authorize the city manager to release said properties through the municipal quitclaim deeds. Council Order Number 051902, request of the city assessor for abatement of FY 2018 taxes assessed to Rumor Hair Salon, Munis ID number 180293, in the amount of $35.94 plus interest and fees. And item number 11, Council Order Number 051903, to request to appoint David Burks to the Planning Board as alternate member with a term to expire on June 30th, 2020. Are there any councilors that would like any of these items removed? Seeing none.
Move
I'd
the
entertain a
consent
motion.
agenda, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor? Unanimous? New business, public hearing and action on the applications for issuance for the following licenses. And we have several of them tonight. First one, Finn's Irish Pub Incorporated, DBA Finn's Irish Pub, 156 Main Street, for renewal of a city Class B license, amusement, victualler, and liquor, and renewal of a state restaurant Class 1, 2, 3, and 4 malt spiritus vinous liquor license. I'll open the public hearing on the Finn's application. If there's anyone that would like to make a comment on this, please come up to the podium and let us know. Seeing none, public hearing is closed.
Move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous? Next, Ellsworth Number 1 LLC, DBA Hampton Inn, Ellsworth, 6 Down East Highway, for renewal of a city lodging license. Public hearing is open, but not for long. It's closed.
Mr. Chairman, move approval of the request of the Hampton Inn for renewal.
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous? Ellsworth RI LLC, DBA Ellsworth Ramada, 215 High Street, for renewal of a city lodging license. Public hearing is open. Public hearing is closed.
Move to approve, Mr. Chair.
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous? Next, Brian Langley, doing business as Union River Lobster Pot, 8th South Street, for renewal of a city Class C license, victualler and liquor, and renewal of a state restaurant Class 1, 2, 3, and 4 malt, spiritus, and vinous liquor license. Public hearing is open. Public hearing is closed.
Move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous? Cresswell Investments, LLC, doing business as Airline Brewing Company, 173 Main Street, for renewal of a city Class B license, victualler, liquor, and amusement, and renewal of a state restaurant Class 3 and 4 malt and vinous liquor license. Public hearing is open, now closed.
Chairman, move approval of the Airline Brewing Company's request for renewal.
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous? Shinbashi Incorporated, doing business as Shinbashi Restaurant, 139 High Street, for renewal of a city Class C license, victualler and liquor, and renewal of a state restaurant Class 1, 2, 3, and 4 malt, spiritus, and vinous liquor license. Public hearing is open. Public hearing is closed.
Mr. Chairman, move approval.
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous? Rockbound Management LLC, doing business as Twin Hills Cottages of Acadia, 210 Twin Hill Road, for renewal of a city lodging license. Public hearing is open, now closed.
Move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous. The Max Incorporated, doing business as the Max, 191 Main Street, for renewal of a city Class C license, victualler and liquor, and renewal of a state restaurant, Class 1, 2, 3, and 4, malt, spiritus, and vinous liquor license. Public hearing is open. It's now closed.
Mr. Chairman, move approval of the next request for renewal.
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous. Susan Scherbel, doing business as Dion's, 35 Eastwood Lane, for renewal of a city Class C victualler and liquor license, and renewal of a state restaurant Class 3 and 4 malt and vinous liquor license. Public hearing is open. Public hearing is closed.
Mr. Chairman, move approval of the renewal for Dion's. Request for renewal.
Mr. Chairman, before you go to a vote, may I make a comment?
Yes.
This is the one that we worked so diligently with the first of the year, and gave them an extension because there were some issues with our code enforcement and fire inspector. I need to commend those two people as well as the applicant for working so well together to get it done for the safety of the people that are in and out of that building. This is a true success story in letting business stay open as they fix.
Thank you very much. So noted. We had the motion and the second. All those in favor? Unanimous.
Let's go for that.
I got $5.
And you'll forgive me if I mispronounce it, please. Zunilda Ayala Escalante, doing business as My Sombrero Mexican Restaurant and Bar, 78 Down East Highway, for a new city Class C license, liquor and victualler, and a new state Class 11 restaurant, lounge, malt, vinous, spiritus liquor license. And the applicant is in attendance. This is a new application. Thank you very much. Public hearing is open. Public hearing is closed.
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Could we ask the code enforcement and the fire inspector to come to the podium and answer some questions? Because I think this motion needs to be amended with some language, because it's not ready. We don't have the signatures of these two people. Mr. Hangy?
Inspector Hangy, from the fire inspector for the city of Ellsworth. We've been working diligently with these folks to get this place open. They have been working diligently themselves with what they have to work with. They're in the process of cleaning, getting everything, the hoods cleaned, the equipment taken care of. I know I've talked with the fire suppression people for the hood, they've taken care of that. The thing that they're waiting on that's holding them up more than anything right now is they have no power in the building. So the issue is that they have no refrigeration, they have no hot water. We can't verify the fan operations for the hood suppression system or anything like that. So we have to wait until Amera can get that light to fit the electricity on before we can verify everything is operational. The state can't do their license inspections because there's nothing there. They have no hot water or anything like that. So they're waiting on the electric company to get this all taken care of. However, we are working diligently with them. The water has been turned on, so they've got some sort of thing that they can do. I know that the hood system will be properly steam cleaned, I believe the middle of the week. J.R. Anderson and daughter is going to be doing that for them. So there's a lot that's been going on, even though they can't open up just yet because they have no power. So that's where we're at, but we're working with them to make sure that happens.
Mr. Chairman, the reason I asked him to come up was we had the conversation today, And in order to allow this business that wants to come to Ellsworth to get open as soon as they can, I'd offer a friendly amendment to the motion, dependent on signatures. We believe these two guys when they go out in the field and inspect and come back and tell them it's ready. I feel I can trust them to, okay, it's ready, sign it, and they're done, they got their license. I think that's,
And that's well within our
Right.
purview.
We've done it
We've
before.
done that before.
Right, and the license won't be issued until those conditions are met.
That is correct.
And just like the previous applicant that you just spoke of.
the only.
Look how well it worked together.
The biggest difference is, this facility has been a restaurant before. So it's gone through the process of getting permits, looking at traffic, looking at distance to churches and schools and stuff like that. So it meets all the stuff. It's just the code that we're working on. If this was a brand-new building going in, I don't know whether I'd be this easy to do it, but I think it's the right thing to do.
And they're bound not to sign off until they meet those
correct.
conditions, regardless of whatever motion you pass.
We can add all the conditions you want, but it's gonna be pretty dark if Emera doesn't turn the light on, so I guess you're gonna
That's
really
the
worry
big
about an
condition
opening.
right now.
That's really what's holding them up right now, is the
Yeah.
electricity, so.
How are you cleaning without any hot water over there?
Carefully.
We've just been using the cold water and a lot of like
Bleach.
chemicals. We're using a washer pressure.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Wow.
And we have a friend that has a generator, so we've kind of connected it to that to be able to have some kind of light and power in there to be able to.
There you go.
Thank God for generators.
Best of luck.
Well, all right, let's get the power on. Another taco.
The friendly amendment, all accepted,
Oh, it's
Yep.
okay?
Thank you.
Motion and a second, all those in favor? Unanimous.
Congratulations.
welcome to Ellsworth.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Item 13, Council Order Number 051904, request of the Finance Director to write off personal property account balances per spreadsheet available in the City Clerk's Department.
Good evening, Counselor. Kelly Herrick, Tax Collector. The tax office has been in the process of cleaning up past due personal property accounts. I have compiled a list of delinquent closed accounts which date from 1995 through 2011. The city has made multiple attempts to collect these past due charges in the past. At this point, these accounts are too old to go back to our collections agent.
The list is a who's who of history in Ellsworth.
Yep. Yep.
Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the request of the Finance Director to write off $13,889.40 in past due personal property accounts per the attached documents, which are some ancient history.
Like you, my hearing's getting bad. Did you say 15,000 or 13?
He said 13.
$13,889.40 as it's written.
Is there a second? Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Item 14, Council Order Number 051905, request of the Public Works Director to award a bid for the Harbor Tank Upgrade Project and authorize the city manager to sign all necessary agreements. And as soon as I can get to,
Move to table, Mr. Chairman.
that's what I thought it was,
Yep.
And
but I have a computer that it really doesn't.
And I would withdraw my motion if the manager wants to speak.
well, we were going to suggest removing it from the agenda without prejudice. Hopefully we'll be coming back. But at the request of the clerk, to actually remove it rather than table it.
I rescind my motion and move to remove it.
Second, yeah.
All those in favor? Unanimous. Item 15, public hearing and action on council order number 051906, the Ellsworth School Budget Resolutions for fiscal year 2020. First item of, looks to be 7. Item A, order approving the state local EPS funding allocation for public education from kindergarten to grade 12 for Ellsworth schools, fiscal year 2020. City Council Order number 051905. Order that the city will appropriate for the total cost of funding public education from kindergarten to grade 12 as described in the Essential Programs and Services Funding Act, recommended $8,689,446, to see what sum the municipality will raise as the municipality's contribution to the total cost of funding public education from kindergarten to grade 12 as described in the EPS Funding Act in accordance with Maine Revised Statutes Title 20A, Section 15688. Madam Clerk, you want a separate vote on each one of these? Okay.
And a public hearing for each of those as well.
I'm sorry?
And a public hearing.
Yep.
Isn't it required the first 4 have to have a recorded vote? Then you can vote on the last 3 together? Right at the top, actions taken pursuant, items 1 through 4 must be taken by a recorded vote.
This is a public hearing on item 15A, the state local EPS funding allocation. Seeing no takers, public hearing is closed. Council action? Councilor Hamilton.
Mr. Chair, I would ask if we could have Superintendent Higgins come up so we can have a little discussion.
Mr. Higgins, if you would, please.
Good evening.
Good evening. He's all yours.
So I guess I'm going to jump into kind of and feel free if there are other pieces you want to round off in terms of the overall budget to do so. But the place I wanted to jump in is the balance forward that we've had in the school budget for the last several years, which has been pretty significant. And just wondering in terms of, as you're looking forward, that seems to be an area that is pretty large. So just wondering if you could explain that piece, because over the last couple of years it's been high, and looking where the budget stands, your current year budget, through the middle of May, there seems like there's going to be a significant balance forward again.
We're glad to, Councilor Hamilton. Back in the first budget that the Ellsworth School Department had put together when we withdrew from RSU 24, the initial fund balance that was applied to offset expenditures was $1.2 million. We have been working with our fund balance over the last 5 years, trying to reduce it down to be approximately 3% of our gross budget, which is where state requirements are. One of the challenges behind that is if you apply more to your budget and reduce that fund balance too quickly, you're going to run into a year subsequent to that where you're either going to have to reduce your budget significantly or experience a significant tax increase. So we have reduced it down from 1.2 million to, what we're proposing this year is 850,000.
So that's a step to get to that 3%, is that?
Yes, it is.
What?
But again, the challenge becomes, as you try to manage that over the long term and the multi-year process, is in each subsequent year, in trying to find a way to use more or less of that to get to that 3%. And again, 3% of a $21 million budget is around $600,000 to $700,000. It becomes a challenge because you don't want to have the local impact of the Ellsworth School Department budget fluctuate too much.
Thank you.
Have you ever had it at 3%?
No.
Or
No,
it's
as I
always
said,
been in
we-
excess of?
We started, as Councilor Hamilton said, we started with a $1.2 million budget. That was funds that came from the RSU back with the withdrawal.
Mhm.
We've been slowly trying to get that down to where our fund balance is at that 3% level. We have not gotten there yet. The challenge becomes when you use too much of the fund balance in a subsequent year, you may run into a challenge where you're either reducing expenditures or raising the tax rate.
Has that fund balance gone down over the last, of the last 5 years?
It's fluctuated a little bit because that fund balance at the end of the year adjusts by the number of revenues that you take in, the amount of revenues that you take in, and what you have left over at the end of the year. We have had some good fortune that the budgeted amounts, we have been well within those, and we have had some years where tuition revenues were very strong. So while we try to get that down, we have not been able to get it down further than where it is. And for example, if we were to add $200,000 to that fund balance right now, that would be great for this year's budget, but we're starting out that much further behind when you get to next year's budget.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
I see Mike's face is puzzled. He's not saying it puts us behind. What he means is, if for 4 years in a row, he takes a chunk of that and puts it into the budget, then the 5th year, when he doesn't have that to do it anymore, it looks like all of a sudden the school's spending more money than they're spending, and the percent goes up, and then everyone's looking to the school like, why is there this huge increase this year when it's actually the fund balance that's not being added to it. So it gives a false sense of normalcy if you take too much away every year, and then the year that you can't do it, it looks like there's a spike in the cost of education, which is not true, but that's what the appearance would be.
Counselor?
So just to understand the fund balance, so in terms of, you're projecting $850,000 to move forward.
Yes.
Does that reconcile with, it looks like between middle of May, where the budget, what you had for expenditures, and the end of the year is a much larger gap than $850,000.
Right now, we're projecting to end this fiscal year with approximately 1.4 to 1.5 million. But remember that we're using 850,000 of that to offset expenditures for the next year. And again, please remember, we started at a very high level back in 2014-15.
That's 3%.
Is there a motion on this item?
Excuse me?
We have to vote on each one separately,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, that's true. So, Dan, did you remove the 150,000 for the study, the HCTC from your budget?
The budget remains essentially as it was when I presented to you folks in the workshop. So no, that feasibility study funding is still in this budget.
Mr. Chairman, could we have an open discussion on the budget as a whole, as to what we're looking at and everything, instead of getting stuck on just one?
I'd welcome it, yes.
I don't believe the taxpayers can afford this budget. I would like to see some taken. Mr. Cole has an idea as far as the 150,000. We put some numbers together today, and it should be underneath your book on the podium. What a couple of us looked at was if we took city side money last year your appropriation to just over $11 million the taxpayers gave you from Ellsworth. Increased it by 3% or 2%. At 2% increase, you still got a 5.25% increase in expenses. And at 3%, you've still got a 5.78% increase in expenses. I think that's far closer to what the citizens of Ellsworth can afford. Instead of the 7.8, I think it was, in the presentation. And, Mr. Chairman, if it's appropriate, could Manager Cole explain to everybody what our thought is on the 150?
Sure, and I've shared that with the superintendent.
Oh, you have, okay.
Yeah, at the time, his budget was already pretty much together. So the deputy city manager and I spoke with the people at the Maine Department of Economic and Community Development, which oversee the TIF program, tax increment financing. I believe the city has at least $150,000 in reserves in that program above and beyond what's budgeted for this year. And they were in agreement that we could use that, a workforce development initiative like what is seen by the Ellsworth Business Development Corporation and members of this council and members of the school certainly constitute an economic development initiative which is eligible under the TIF program and under the city's economic development TIF. So we're comfortable that it could come from that source and could be taken out of the school budget, but still done.
Councilor?
I'd just comment on that. I think that's a good plan in terms of when we talk about the school budget and then the city budget. It's really one large budget, and to be able to identify this to support career technical education in the city for our youth and for the businesses, it makes sense to do it that way. And I think that it's an opportunity to continue to build that collaboration between the school and the city operations to find different ways to collaborate to improve not only the educational system, but also to address our budgets and to find other ways to do it. So I think that's a great idea that you put forward.
Yeah, the way we presented this to the state was that these funds would be used to identify training needs, market-driven by our employers and businesses in the area, what programs were needed for training, and what facilities would be needed, to accommodate that. You could not use these funds to build a school, but you can use them to bring together the school, the private sector, and the community to develop an initiative. So that would take that $150,000 off the burden of the school budget.
Councilor Hudson?
So I want to also point out that in our discussions, it was very clear that the city's plan or vision for this, Dan, is not to take over this project. It is intended to be a collaborative project where we're hoping that the school board and the superintendent and the some folks, some of our business leaders in the area and the council and EBDC will all work together to put this, help facilitate this plan and get this this going. But I just wanted to reach out and make sure that it's clear that this wasn't any sort of hostile takeover, just a more creative way of funding the kickoff, the initial.
And also a way to take the burden off general taxation.
Mm-hmm.
Councilor Fortier?
And historically, I was in the middle of this on the Ellsworth Elementary Middle School. We had a dynamic group of citizens and teachers and educators, administrative people that worked diligently to get that school through the Department of Education. And then we discovered that the building committee was required by DOE to be appointed by the city council. And the city council at that time didn't rubber stamp the ad hoc building committee that did all the work up front. They put some people on there and hurt some people. And I was hoping we could do this right the first time on this project, is to do that and get the group together and go to work.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions?
Just one. It's going to be my motion when we get there that, depending on what nods I get around the table, 2% or 3%, is that we'll take that out of additional local, don't touch the other ones, and take it off the bottom line. Those are the only two changes I believe we need to do, and then you plug in the figures where you want to.
And I appreciate what the council is doing. Certainly I came prepared to discuss all of these issues and more. Just want to make sure that what it is that the school department is advocating for, and as you know, the $150,000 came about through a process where we were approached as a school department by EBDC, and we were certainly willing participants as a school board, as you know. And certainly if the council's action is to approve a budget that in essence is $150,000 less than what's been provided to you, I certainly would still like an opportunity to advocate for what is remaining in the budget, because we certainly can remove that study, particularly if it's going to be funded through another means. But there are items in this budget that we absolutely need to have. You know, when you look at our community is growing. We enrolled over 50 students more this school year than we anticipated a year ago at this time. We're seeing significant increases in housing in the community. We're seeing attractiveness in our school system. People who are moving here for opportunities are also moving here to have children attend our schools. What we're asking for is absolutely needed to continue for the school department to be attractive, quality program, and a partner with you folks in the economic growth and development of our community.
Counselor?
So in terms of rough numbers, the overall proposal, it's about 1.7 million increase.
Yeah,
Roughly.
without any change.
Without any change.
Without any change, the overall proposal would be, including adult ed, $23,043,356.26, which is an increase of 1.671 million, or 7.82%.
And that's over the budget for last year, and you're talking about ending this year with a surplus of 1.5 million?
Of which 850,000 is targeted towards offsetting expenditures for next year.
Right, just in the I just want to try to understand it. So if you're underspending the current year budget by 1.5 million, and then you're on top of that expecting to 1.7, that's about a $3 million increase over the current year. So I'm trying to understand those numbers in terms of going forward.
Again, looking at the proposed expenditures, that's one part of the puzzle. What we're advocating in this budget that was provided to you folks is what we need to continue operation of the school system next year, reflecting the needs that we have. You know, we're looking at increasing over 50 students at Ellsworth High School. We're looking at additional needs for positions to support that. We're looking at additional positions to support needs for transportation, because we have more students in our schools. We're also dealing with a significant spike in mental health needs, behavioral needs. This budget reflects needs in that area. And there are many more things that we can talk about. With regard to the fund balance, again, I stress, it's not that we have that money just sitting there that we can use $1.5 million. We started with a fund balance that was applied to this budget of 1.2 million, and we're slowly trying to work it down in a responsible fashion so that we don't have fluctuations in what we're asking our taxpayers to support. The other piece that I would add in, you know, if you look over historical school budgets over the last 3 years, you know, since 2016, when the Department of Ed came up with less money for education. And by the way, that was a year that we had a budget that increased 2.2% on the expenditure side. Over the last 3 years, FY17, we had a budget that increased 2.64% on the expenditure side and had a 0% increase local appropriation. FY18, a budget that increased 1.76% on the expenditure side, or 0.48% increase locally. Current year budget increased 3.43% on the expenditure side and 1.93% on the local side. Over the past 3 years, we have not accounted for a significant increase in the tax base. And again, I love to look at that as a history. We've had 3 of 4 budgets come in at less than 2.7% on the expenditure side of an increase. We historically are not asking for what we don't need. This happens to be a year where the needs are significant, and many of the needs are significant because we have increased students and increased needs for students in our schools. I'm certainly happy to run through more specifically what it is we're asking for.
We did it a couple weeks ago, it hasn't changed.
Nope.
What was the increase, Dan, for your special education costs for this coming year?
Projecting special education cost to increase by $170,000 approximately, which is 4.8%. And the bulk of that increase is due to half of a new behavior interventionist. I mentioned behavioral issues with students in schools, which also ties into the mental health issues. And 4 new ed techs to accommodate needs for incoming students. That takes up the bulk of that $170,000 increase.
The needs that you know you're going to have, not the ones you haven't anticipated yet.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Mr. Chairman, what gets me though is I went through and I believe you've got 22 FTE positions you're adding this year, including bus drivers and techs and...
No.
Well, if you go through...
I'm looking at, in regular instruction, we're adding the equivalent of 6 full-time teachers, 1 full-time equivalent ed tech. Special education, half-time teacher and 4 ed techs. In CTE, we're not adding a teacher, but this is the first year that our biomed teacher is no longer funded by a federal grant. So in essence, you're adding that position to the budget.
That's insignificant. I mean, that's a
That's a $52,000 price tag.
Yeah.
In student and staff services, again, we have student needs in Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. We're adding 1.5 full-time equivalent teaching positions there. It's also transitioning our instructional coach from grant funding, where we used to fund that position, to full funding in the local budget, and IT staff to manage the multitude of needs that we have. And I know you as a council know, on the city side, IT is an expensive ticket item. We are adding half a custodial position to get us back up to where we need to be with the square footage that we have. And we are adding a new bus driver and a van driver. Bus driver is to accommodate the increased number of students that ride our buses on a daily basis. The van driver is to transport a student that cannot be transported on our regular buses.
And 1 in the food service.
1 in food service.
So it's just under 20.
And again, each one of those positions is being added because of a specific need. And I know, I'm preaching to the choir.
I want to tell you, you're the expert here. You're telling me you need this to run your schools, and I believe you.
Right.
Honestly, I believe you. But I can't sit here as a counselor and tell Highway, sorry, you're going to have to fix that 20-year-old truck. You're not getting one. The fire department, you're not getting your training you want. Balance. And I think someone said a couple of years ago, everybody's got to bleed a little.
And Councilor Forte, I agree with you, and that's one of the reasons I presented the history of what we've done. We certainly are playing a role, and I don't place our budget on any higher priority than the Highway Department, Police Department, Fire
That's why
Department, or
we
any other
have
city
these
department.
conversations and smile.
Yeah. Oh, I'm smiling.
Yeah. They're not cutting anywhere near enough.
Counselor?
I hear what you're saying, Gary,
Mhm.
and at some point it has to be the school's turn. At some point, we have to stop kicking all of their needs and issues down the road and put some money into that program as well. It's there are kids, there are future employees, and this is a huge part of what we are as a community, and it will attract or detract people from coming here. The schools have to be the jewel in our crown, because people will happily pay less taxes and live in Lemoyne and send their kids to Ellsworth High School anyway. we have to, it's not a nice to have. Some of this stuff, we have to pay attention to it. We have to get the staff in there that they need to run that program run the programs correctly, and we have to address some of the items that come up year after year after year that we just don't give them enough money to ever get accomplished and fixed and right.
Council?
So for me, I'm just wrestling with, in terms of not cutting, but it's this balance forward for me. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. Is if we're gonna end the year with underspending 1.5 million, at some point we should be using what's allocated to meet the needs and not keep moving funds forward because it costs more every time you do it. So I guess I'm looking at it is if there are some of these needs that are out there, why not utilize more of the fund balance this year? We're also looking at potentially seeing an increase in a state share with what the legislature is talking about. So why not take advantage of funds that exist and not push that onto the tax rate?
Well, he rarely gets
Councilor
those
Hamilton,
increases.
the piece that I would reference there is, we have been working to do that. What we're trying to avoid from the school department, again, which is part of the city, we could very easily add $200,000 to that fund balance. What my concern would be, and again, I would also say historically, we've been right-sizing the budget for the past 5 years. We started out with a budget that was done back in 14-15 that people did a great job on, but it was without any history prior to that. We've been working to make sure that that budget becomes more and more specified and specific each year. We could certainly add that, but I would be concerned that next year or the year after, we would be in a position where we've used too much for this particular year or too much for next year, and you get to a point where you have a significant increase to the tax base the year after.
Or we cut services.
That's the concern that I have. And I would also say, if I could go back a second, when I give the history of what we've had as a school department for local impact, it's not complaining at all. Look, as Councilor Fortier just said, we have these discussions and there's a smile. We all know that there are limited resources. And giving that history does not say that we're not getting what we need to operate. We advocate for it every year, and we know that we're part of a greater picture. So there's not a complaint there. It's just saying that over the past 3 years, we've really done a good job, and we've demonstrated that we're bringing appropriate budgets to the council and to the voters. The reason I mention that history is this year is no exception to that. It just happens to be that with increased students, increased needs. It's a significant increase. The other piece of information I'd like to give to you is when you look at the overall increase in the budget, 49% of it comes in increased staffing, okay, for the needs that we just talked about. 35% of it comes in facilities. You know, $150,000 of it is the study that we're talking about possibly funding in a different line. $133,000 of it is the roof at HCTC, which we've been patching for the past 5 years. Unfortunately, patching it is no longer an option. It's going to have to stay in the budget. We've got the gym floor at Ellsworth High School that was replaced after 1 or 2 years when the building was constructed back in the 90s. Okay. It needs to be refinished and sanded and repainted. It hasn't been done since the gym has been in place. That's in the budget at $58,000. You know, there are pieces in there for staffing and maintenance that have to be addressed. Okay. And we have been deferring them as we can, trying to make sure we have an appropriate plan moving forward.
I have a suggestion for a plan moving forward. I think, Dan, that it would be exceedingly helpful to garner support for your department with more interaction and communication between the council and you and the school board. We meet with our highway department every week. We meet with every one of the other departments in the city on a regular, continuous basis. So we're intimately familiar with what the shortages are, where they are, what's happening on a week-to-week basis, which makes it a lot more palatable, and there are many more ways for us to wrap our mind around when they come to us and say, here it is, and this is what I need, and you know, we've been talking about this, and we went this way and not that way, and here was why. And with the school, it's budget time. And then, and folks who haven't been immersed in this school department and gone through this process too, their minds are reeling oftentimes because they can't wrap their minds around it because it's a one-shot deal once a year, maybe 2 or 3 meetings. And I think that, I don't know, I think that it would be easier for the council to be able to understand and help you move forward with this with a stronger, more consistent relationship. That's just my suggestion. I think it would be better for us and for you.
I think one of the most important parts of what you said is it would help us to better understand exactly what goes into your requests for funding and how you got there. Frankly, there's some times when I hear it, I have no idea really how you got there.
Certainly, our school board, as you know, which meets monthly, has several standing committees. We stand ready to come and meet with the council when invited. I know I've got a standing from City Manager Cole, invite me to a finance committee meeting anytime. We provide you with all the information that we can.
Well, then I think what we'll do then is invite you and the board, or sometime you can invite us.
All property noticed, of course.
What? What?
Legal posted, of course.
There are no surprises in this budget, folks. There are no surprises in here.
Well, that's easy for you to say, Dan. I say that tongue in cheek, but.
Yeah, and it's the.
Counselor?
So, I appreciate in terms of the future years and looking at next year and the impact. I guess when I look at some of the items, the 133 for a roof, 100 for the lighting, the 50 plus for the floor, those are items that are in the budget that are going to be paid out of this next year's budget. Moving that forward, those are expenses that will not be in next year's budget.
Sorry, go ahead.
So there's and then the 150, that's $440,000 of expenses that are being covered in this budget the way it's presented that will not show up in the budget next year. And so in terms of the moving forward, I think that sometimes you take a little bit of a risk, but why not use more of that fund balance to achieve the goal of lowering the tax rate and maintaining your budget so that you can meet those needs, and then next year that 440,000 is not there.
But two more.
But that's not
projects will be.
Right.
Well, maybe yes,
Again,
maybe no.
But again, what I've had my facilities and maintenance director do since he's come on is to revise our facilities and maintenance plan. Okay, so these are projects, the ones that I mentioned, that have been put off. And again, we have not caused any safety or health concerns by doing that, but you can only put them off so many times. Okay, the roof at HCTC could have been replaced 5 years ago. We've saved a lot of money by not replacing it. Okay, we're at the point now where it needs to be done, plain and simple. There will be something to replace that. There are other projects that we have. The presentation I was going to do is, we've got a lot of things in this budget, but there are a number of things that are not in this budget because they're not quite high priority enough. We still have parking lots that need to be paved. We still have work at HCTC that needs to be done with the parking lot. We've been trying to expand their parking lot and resurface their parking lot for 5 years. It has not survived the budget process. Those are $60,000, $70,000, and $80,000 projects. It may not be $400,000 for those projects, you're right, but it may be $300,000, it may be $275,000.
Yep. And for me, and I've been saying this with the city budget, is getting out front and understanding what the capital needs are. And so as I sit here tonight listening to it, trying to weigh all this out, not knowing what that is, not having an idea of what those items are and what the 5-year plan might be, it makes these discussions that one-time issue of then trying to guess. And that makes it hard to make those decisions. So that's a part of it too, and I think it goes to what Councilor Hudson said around having more communication so that we're able to be looking down the road collectively, because I think there's also places where we can leverage some of those resources. And So it's one budget, and so that for me, sitting here tonight, that's a missing piece, is I don't know what is next year. I'm just looking at that for this year and saying, is there a way to achieve what you want and reach that balance?
We can absolutely provide that information, but please know, the school board does an outstanding job in managing our resources and managing our fiscal ship. You know, we do have that information. We're certainly happy to provide it.
I don't want you to misinterpret or misunderstand what we're talking about with this communication and having this information. Well, in no way is this an attempt to try to manage what you're doing. What it is an attempt to glean additional information so that we're better prepared for what you're going to be asking for, so that it's not sticker shock, and that there is buy-in because we've watched whatever it is evolve. Watched it evolve, not help it evolve, not stick our finger in it, not tell you did this wrong, you should have done it another way. That's not at all what we're interested in doing. It's more of an understanding of what's happening with you as it's happening, so that we aren't surprised when it comes to budget time and you know, we're faced with an increase.
And with all due respect, Councilor Hudson, that's not how I'm interpreting it at all. I don't look at the city council as trying to micromanage the school department. I know that's not how it works. I guess the piece for me is I know that since I've been here as a superintendent, we've had a great relationship between the school board, superintendent, and city council. We're happy to meet and provide any information that the council wants with regard to the school budget operations. It's a matter of simply being invited. And I've had that conversation with City Manager Cole earlier in the year.
You know, we're sitting here and debating this, and this, obviously everyone's got their own, you know, where we're headed. I don't want your headaches. You can have the school board, you can decide what you want to do with the money. You can decide what gets done and what needs to be done. And I understand that you're trying to do it logically and efficiently. But you've got a fair amount of positions in this. And what we're trying to do here at this point, with what you've presented and what the city side has presented, we're looking at over $1 million increase in our tax rate. And we talk about the expansion of the city and how things are coming and going. But we also, as a board sitting here, have to be responsible to make it affordable to live in the city. And some of the pain, unfortunately, has got to be spread between your side and our side. And I do think there's got to be a little bit of give, one way or another, whether how we decide on this side or not, and it's up to you with what you do with the bottom line. And I'm not sitting here taking huge amounts, but I'm taking a small amount. And even with that, you have a fairly substantial increase in expenditures. We're not cutting your budget, we're trying to limit what you might have. We're certainly not taking away. You're getting a definite increase, but it's also on the backs of our taxpayers. And this is why we sit here tonight debating this, because this will go out for a vote, and in all likelihood, whatever's presented at that point, and the vote will be approved, and then it's back in our lap, and then we are sitting here playing with the municipal side, not doing the things that you are not going to do. We're sitting and doing it with highway and everybody else, stealing that, trying to keep that mill rate where it is. So I think the bottom line on this is we're trying to share some of the pain.
Completely understand.
Any further comments?
So,
I'm sorry?
debate some more? Do we start moving along? And
I got one question, Superintendent. Whether you like it or not, are we accurate in that if we want to cut some money, that all we have to do is cut it out of your additional local and out of the total, and everything else can stay where it is?
My understanding is, and I'd rather term it not whether I like it or not.
No, is that appropriate? Is that
If you're gonna tell me something about baseball, I won't like it.
Not
but
whether
with
it's
the
okay,
budget-
is it
No,
correct?
my understanding is, if the council wants to approve a budget that is less money than is presented, Yeah. For example, I'll toss an example out there, this feasibility study for $150,000. That would certainly come right out of the additional local.
Yeah, that's kind of controlling everything else, right?
Mhm.
Everything else would have to fall into line.
So whatever
Now-
we take out of additional local, we take off the bottom line and everything's cool.
Well, if you took that out, then we would have to go back and we may have to, let's say it was something other than the feasibility study. We would have to go back and look at what lines it would come out of.
Right.
Yes.
That's the only thing I'm advocating comes out, because we have a funding source for that that we think is viable. The rest of it, I'm giving you a number to come out, and you decide what that does. Okay?
Gary's given the number.
I think he has to get 2 or 3 people to agree with him. Maybe 3.
And let's be honest, we all know that if Augusta was paying us
They're supposed to pay.
55% EPS, 100% or appropriate special education dollars, federal and state, the city revenue sharing, we'd be over the fins right now celebrating, we got a budget and it's a good one.
Pretty sure that's not happening, so we're here with a bit of reality, Mr. Fortier.
Oh, I know it is, I'm just,
Councilor Hamilton.
So, I'm going to sound like a broken record, I'm sorry. So if there's a reduction in the budget, do you have the ability to increase the fund balance, or is that something we have to do as part of this process? How does that happen? Because you could go back and increase that.
You as a council, in essence, will set the bottom line. Then the board will have to go back and determine how we achieve that bottom line.
Yep.
And that's happened before.
Yeah.
The fund balance has been
So we,
adjusted.
the specific question is, could we add $20,000 to the fund balance? We could.
So you could, rather than cut, you might decide to use the fund balance to continue with those items.
Which would bring it, which would bring us back to the question you were asking before. We would have to balance that, because as we all know, that's not a single year piece. But
I don't mean to question.
protocol-wise, yes, we could.
I don't mean to question, but I thought the use of fund balance in the budget was sanctum, it's set. If we agree to 850,000, you have the right to go back and take 1.1 million?
My understanding is whatever the council votes to approve this evening is what's going to go to the voters.
Yes.
Right.
So long as we don't expend above and beyond that, well, we can't.
And the board allocates it from there, right?
Right.
The school board.
Yeah, that's still,
That is an option to the school board to adjust them, and that's happened in the past.
still bottom line. And he does
Yep.
what he likes. Like it or not, as he
Well,
says.
that's the law,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
whether we like it or not.
Yeah, whether you like it or not, yeah. So,
Okay, question of protocol here. We have 4 separate votes to take, or 4 votes to take on the first 4 items. Is that correct?
that's the way it sounds.
And the number, for instance, in the first item, where they recommend 8.689, no matter what the bottom line is, that number will stay, 8.689?
Okay. Yeah, that number there, it's important to know, that is the amount of money that the city is required
Right,
to
that's the
raise
minimum.
in order to receive full state subsidy.
Okay, so that has nothing to do with,
Right,
with
right,
That's state law.
the number that you're gonna go home with tonight that we give you.
right.
It factors into it, but if we don't pay that, if we don't come up with that out of taxation, we don't get the state money.
Right. And we've historically paid well in excess of that amount.
Yeah.
If
So
you,
it's
if you
not-
raised, if you, for example, if you voted to raise half of that, you would only receive half of your state subsidy.
Right.
Right. Are we ready to vote on that,
Yeah.
on the first item?
Yes.
Is there a motion, please?
Move to approve the school board recommendation of $8,689,446.
Second.
This is for the Essential Programs and Services Funding Act.
Yes.
Okay. Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this? All those in favor? Unanimous. 15, I believe it's 15B. Order approving non-state funded school construction debt service for Ellsworth schools for fiscal year 2020. City Council Order number 051900. Order that the city will raise and appropriate for annual payments on debt service previously approved by the legislative body for non-state funded school construction projects or non-state funded portions of school construction projects, in addition to the funds appropriated as the local share of the school administrative unit contribution to the total cost of funding public education from kindergarten to grade 12. The school board recommends $99,092.32.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. C. City Council Order number 05190. Is that a 5 or 6? I can't tell. It's a 6. Order that the city of Ellsworth raise and appropriate $2,957,399.74 in additional local funds, which exceeds the state's essential programs and services allocation model by $2,957,399.74 as required to fund the budget recommended by the school board. The school board recommends that amount for additional local funds and gives the following reasons for exceeding the state's ESP funding model by that amount. The amount is needed to cover the school department's expenses that are not recognized or fully funded by the state's funding model. On this one, we can make an adjustment to that number.
I would
if
suggest,
we so
Mr. Chairman,
choose.
that if you get a motion, and then I'll offer up an amendment to change the
Okay.
amount.
Will that be a friendly amendment?
We'll see. Never mind, I'll let a motion get on the floor first.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask councilors, in front of you, you had a couple pieces of paper that the finance staff put out showing two scenarios, a 2% increase in school appropriation from last year and a 3%. I would suggest, since the majority of the school department's money is tied up in people, and I believe they negotiated a 3% or thereabouts wage increase, that I don't want to see them go behind. So I'm going to make an amendment to change the amount in this total local, additional local funds to the figure given to me by staff, which is $2,521,530.22. That gives them a 5.78% increase in expense budgets over last year, down from 768 or whatever it was.
Total budget.
That was in that line item.
Yep.
Did you get the number, Clerk Grindle, or do you want me to repeat it?
All right, see you.
2,521,530.22. What that does is essentially reduces the local share by $435,869.52 in that one item.
I'll accept that as a friendly amendment.
Motion and a second, and the friendly amendment accepted by both. And, I'm sorry?
Was it accepted by both?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on this item?
I think just to put it in context, out of that, the 150,000 that we talked about moving,
Yeah.
reduces the reduction down to about $286,000.
Correct.
Correct.
And again, I would certainly advocate, my personal opinion, the school board really look at the fund balance and looking at that based on what you're talking about needs. But that's for the school board to ultimately decide.
Further discussion?
I think, Mr. Chairman, that at the end of the orders, I believe there's a place to amend the revenue stream if you so wanted them to use another 200,000 in fund balance to offset,
I think,
which comes down to about $85,000 cut in their budget.
so,
And a $22 million budget.
we're going to act on this.
But, yeah.
Motion and a second on this. All those in favor? Unanimous? $15D, order approving total school operating budget for Ellsworth schools for fiscal year 2020. City Council Order Number 051906, ordered that the City of Ellsworth will authorize the school board to expend for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2019 and ending June 30th, 2020 from the school administrative unit's contribution to the total cost of funding public education from kindergarten to grade 12 as described in the EPS Funding Act, the non-state funded school construction projects, additional local funds for school purposes under the Maine Revised Statutes, Title 20A, Section 15690, unexpended balances, tuition receipts, state subsidy, and other receipts for the support of schools.
The amount? The amount?
Oh, I'm sorry, school board has recommended $22,829,278.91.
You've got to reduce that.
Yep, I got the number. Public hearing also, I believe.
This is a public hearing on item 15D. If there's anyone that wants to speak on it, now's your chance. Seeing none, the public hearing is closed.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I move the order with the amount reduced because of our previous action to $22,393,409.39. I'll repeat that because I stumbled. $22,393,409.39.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor? Unanimous? $15D, I'm sorry, E. Order appropriating and raising funds for adult education for fiscal year 2020 as required by the Maine Revised Statutes, Title 20-A, MRSA, subsection 8603/A, section 1. Ordered that the City of Ellsworth appropriate $214,077.35 for adult education and raise that same amount as the local share with authorization to expend any additional, incidental, or miscellaneous receipts in the interest and for the well-being of the adult education program.
So moved.
Second.
Public hearing.
It's a public hearing on this item. Now's your chance. Public hearing is closed. Councilors, what's your pleasure?
Oh,
Well, we should restate the motion because we did it before the,
So moved.
second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah,
Motion and a second.
it's a
Ditto.
procedure.
Ditto.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Item 15F, order raising local funds for food service in the Ellsworth Public Schools for fiscal year 2020. Order that the city authorizes the sum of $151,000, $151,101.15 is hereby raised for all other expenditures, the food service program for fiscal year 2019-2020, and that the Ellsworth School Department is authorized to expend any unexpended balances and additional incidental or miscellaneous receipts in the interest and for the well-being of the food service program. Public hearing is open. Public hearing is closed.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous? Item 15G, order authorizing expenditure of grants and other receipts for the school department program. Order that in the event of the Ellsworth School Department receives more state education subsidy than the amount included in its budget, the school board be authorized to use all or part of the additional state subsidy to increase expenditures for school purposes in cost center categories approved by the school board. Increase the allocation of finances.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Skip
you
one.
missed one, Mr. Chairman. I think you're down one too many.
We didn't talk about authorized
Story of my
expenditure
life.
of grants and other receipts.
Order authorized expenditure of grants and other receipts for
Yeah.
school department
Yeah.
programs.
Order that in addition to amounts approved for the fiscal year 2019, is that the one?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes, sir.
School operating budget, the school board be hereby authorized to expend such other items, such other sums as may be received from federal or state grants or programs or other sources during the fiscal year for school purposes, provided that such grants, programs, or other sources do not require the expenditure of other funds not appropriated for the school operating budget. Public hearing is open. Public hearing is closed.
Move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous.
And now,
And now. Next item, order authorizing disposition of additional state subsidy. Order that in the event the Ellsworth School Department receives more state education subsidy than the amount included in its budget, the school board be authorized to use all or part of the additional state subsidy to increase expenditures for school purposes in cost center categories approved by the school board, increase the allocation of finances in a reserve fund approved by the school board, and/or decrease the local cost share expectation as defined in Title 20-A, Section 15671-A, Sections 1 and B, for local property taxpayers for funding public education as approved by the school board.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Oh, wait a minute. You got a public hearing. I'm jumping.
Public hearing is open. It's now closed. Yes, sir.
I would suggest that I move that that be reworded to say, ordered in the event, and I'll give this to the clerk, ordered that in the event the Ellsworth School Department receives more state education subsidy than the amount included in its budget, that any additional state subsidy the school department receives shall be submitted to the city treasurer to reduce local property taxes.
So
That's
this
what
lays
we
out,
did last year.
this lays out all the options available to us, then there's discussion on the council on how we want to handle it, correct? It's not that it's worded wrong, it's that that's the option you'd like to go with, but there are other options on there that.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
we can
That's what we
discuss.
did last year, and that was my motion. It's either gonna get seconded or die.
Motion and a second. Further discussion?
I think it might be a good discussion to have that we could look at some of these projects that aren't funded and perhaps that's a way of funding some things outside of next year and next year and next year when we get additional state revenues that were unanticipated, when the budget's passed and everyone's good with the numbers and everything, it's a way to cut out some of these things that we don't want to, that we find difficult to include in budgets every year that makes it fluctuate. I think it's a good opportunity to take some money we weren't expecting and knock some things out. Like we could have done that with the money from last time and taken care of the roof, and we wouldn't be funding the roof this year. That's my 2 cents.
Anything further?
If he funds the roof with it, it doesn't help our taxpayers.
We're gonna have to, taxpayers are gonna have to pay it eventually anyway. And if this budget's passed, then they're gonna have to come up with the money next year, Gary, they're gonna have to come up with it. And this is,
I've been here a long time, Don. I understand the dance. I really do. I agree with you, but I'm looking out for the taxpayers.
they're gonna have to pay it eventually,
No,
You
we're
can't
gonna
save
build a
them.
new facility.
because that's not gonna cost any
Let's
money.
put some money on the roof and then tear it down.
So the-
You're 100% right, but
But,
that's not my motion. Vote mine down and make one.
So I guess part of me is trying to, not knowing what the school board's going to decide in terms of some of the reductions, and whether or not they'll keep those expenses in place, and use the fund balance or not. It makes it hard to then kind of determine where these expenditures go. I would be happy with some middle ground where we could have some dialogue down the road as opposed to in this moment. So I don't know if there's a way to craft it.
that is an option, you can do a hybrid.
But I know-
And we can have those
this-
discussions when and if there is money that comes back. I think.
Mr. Chairman, I think the superintendent has this idea.
Just a thought.
Yes, sir.
And notwithstanding Councilor Fortier's motion, because I understand that is his motion, certainly if the state were to come forward with additional subsidy, the intent of us would be, if we were going to look to or want to increase expenditure lines, it certainly would not be without conversation with the board and then the council. My understanding right now is, however, the only chance of seeing any additional money would be on the CTE line. There was a bill that is still sitting on the appropriations table that might result in about $27,000, $28,000 on the CTE subsidy line. Now, the one thing I would caution you on that is CTE is a new animal this year in terms of funding. We have to maintain a separate fund balance for that. It's likely that would have to be used to offset CTE expenditures, which would in effect reduce the tax burden. But certainly, depending upon where the council wants to go with this, and certainly respect your decision, if it was a case where there were going to be additional money that could be used, certainly it would be a conversation that would involve the council. Because I'm a taxpayer in Ellsworth too. I like my taxes.
Even though he
Inappropriately.
lives in New York.
Counselor?
I would like to suggest that $27,000 or $30,000 in our school system would be felt, the impact would be much more significant than splitting up $27,000 or $30,000 between every resident, dividing it out and sending that money back to the households.
My intent was to have that as the GPS model funding, not the special CTE. That's a separate bill, separate statute.
May I ask
Or
a
does it get lumped in?
No, they would send it to us separately, I believe. In our 279, you would see it included on the CTE line. But just a point of clarification to your motion, my understanding was in a previous year when we received additional subsidy, it went to reduce the additional local line. So instead of sending money back to the treasury, it just simply reduced what the school department was getting.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine. Bookkeeping exchange.
Either way, it reduces the tax burden.
Yep.
Right. And in one year, I believe, we did a combination of money going
It's
to the
happened on two
school.
occasions. One year it directly reduced
Right.
the local assessment, and in
And
another
some of the
year,
money
there
went
was
to
a
the
30,
school.
there was a $38,000 number that needed to be funded, and the council said, "Yeah,
Yeah.
use that, and we'll take the rest of the tax reduction." Yeah.
I can see that happening again if the need's there.
We did this last year. And
I think we had the same argument last year.
That's why that's where I got the
That's
verbiage.
right, from what?
And from my recollection,
Yep.
Have
it
the
worked,
same answer
it worked out
last
quite
year.
well.
Depending on,
Pardon?
We didn't get any.
But the one thing, kind of harkens over to Councilor Fortier's comment. The one word I haven't heard a whole lot here tonight is the word local taxpayers. It's, they can't be forgotten. They're on the forefront of my mind. If we can save them, I don't care if it's $1 a bill. Let's save them $1 a bill. Councilor Hudson, when you said if there's any extra money that comes in, let's put it towards, some of these expenses that aren't in the budget. Which, to me, it just speaks of, if we get any extra money, let's spend it.
They're in the budget, we're just not funding them. We just cut a bunch of them out.
That's correct.
So they are in the budget.
Yeah. But if they don't need, if it doesn't need to be spent this year,
There are needs that they're asking for.
asking and needs, in my mind, aren't necessarily the same.
Leaky roof.
So I think,
Mr. Chairman, do you have a motion and a second?
Yes.
Yes.
I believe Council Moore seconded it.
Mm-hmm.
Councilor?
so just as part of this discussion, I think we did make reductions in the budgets. I think part of what we're dealing with overall is looking at, we have increases across the board, and that's what we're looking at as a council. The school has increases. I think as a council, we made some decisions about reducing that before it goes out to the voters. And I think that the voters have a right to say, they may reject that, and they may say, you didn't cut enough, or they may say, yes, we approve it, knowing what's in the budget. And so I think when we're talking about $28,000, I would agree with Councilor Hudson that it would serve a greater purpose in some of those areas of need at the school than it would by putting it just back into the city's general fund in this case. But I maintain that I would hope that we would have a process to look at that. If this legislature, by the end of this week, when they pass the budget, and they increase it by 55%, we can have a better discussion about this.
Do you have some information that we don't have?
No, I just hope somebody's listening.
So that is one of the options on here, is to have some sort of hybrid where we figure it out later.
So that's just my opinion in terms of the motion that's on the table and seconded.
I'm always willing to work with the school department.
Any further?
I'd like to think that if we were to do that, and money was added to the treasury, that if something came up, an emergency of some sort that required that amount of money at the school, that we would forward it back to them.
And we could appropriate it from fund balance.
It might add, in the past, the three options have been to give it to the school, reduce taxes, or carry it forward to next year as a reserve to go towards next year's budget.
I thought there was an option to do a hybrid Is that wrong?
Yeah,
Am I wrong?
those are the three, you can combine those three any way you
I
want to.
see, okay.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of Councilor Fortier's motion? Councilor Mod, okay. All those opposed?
Hamilton Hudson.
Motion passes 5-2.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Mr.
Dan.
Superintendent.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Dan. That was good.
Thank you, Dan.
Have a great evening, folks.
Very good, very good.
Item 16, Council Order Number 051907, request of the wastewater treatment plant superintendent for authorization to obtain engineering services from Woodard and Curran pertaining to the potential upgrades to the Water Street pump station and collection system.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Talking about a lot smaller amounts of money. My name is Mike Harris, Ellsworth Wastewater Superintendent. I'm here tonight to ask the council's approval for engineering to be done by Woodard and Curran in the amount of $27,500 to look at either upgrading our Water Street pump station or doing work to remove excess flow from the collection system around the pump station. This is all being driven by a notice of violation from the Department of Environmental Protection. The Water Street pump station during periods of heavy snow melt and rain combined, approximately once a year, once every other year, has a situation where a manhole adjacent to the station will overflow because the station is pumping as much as it can, but it has too much flow and it's getting overwhelmed. And we've always reported those to the Department of Environmental Protection, and the department has come back now and said that we need to come up with a solution for this problem. And so this is the first step in trying to give us a path forward for figuring out what the best option will be for us, and then moving on from there to figure out how we're going to fund that.
And this was part of the city's submittal to the Department of Environmental Protection regards of our plan to remedy the situation.
Yes.
This is the first step.
Yes.
So we have a gun being held to our head.
More or less.
This is not optional, though.
That's, exactly.
It's gotta be a tad inconvenient when the geyser takes place anyway.
But I do think that, and this has been discussed at the Finance Committee, I do believe that it's been brought down to the basic core issues along Water Street. We have other needs, but this focuses on that and trying to figure out the best way to go about this. The estimates right now, and we'll discuss this in another item, but they figure it's going to be a $1.3 million project, no matter which alternative we take. It's going to be in that range. So it is significant. Either you have bigger pipes or more pumping power, one or the other.
Pretty much.
Not bigger pipes, less inflow.
Yeah.
Oh, the
More secure pipes.
I hate treating clean water.
I do too.
Yeah.
Gets expensive.
Yes, it is. Either way you go, it's gonna be extreme.
Whether it's infiltration or.
Yeah. I mean,
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the proposal by Wood and Curran and authorize the finance director to withdraw $27,500 from the wastewater capital reserve funded project.
Second. Second.
Put a little excitement into that
Yeah,
second.
I was just, waiting to be recognized, but that's no big deal.
Oh, I didn't hear your hand up, I'm sorry.
Motion and a second. Further discussion?
Oh, boy. Please do that.
All those in favor? Unanimous.
All right, study your water.
Thank you.
Item 17, Council Order Number 51908, request to approve a sidebar agreement between the City of Ellsworth and the Ellsworth Highway Department Unit, local number 327, Massachusetts, and Northern New England Labor's District Council to allow an upgrade to a current highway worker position to be a crew leader.
Good evening, councilors. Lisa Sykes, Public Works Director. I'm here tonight to request the upgrade of a current highway crew position. That would not mean an additional crew member, just an upgrade to a position. Request is driven by two things. One is this position will be tasked with organizing and dispensing the crews throughout the day in assistance to the Public Works foreman, as well as succession planning as our foreman is retiring in the semi-near future. So we would like to get at least one, if not multiple people out there, some training and knowledge before he decides to depart from us. So.
And would add, it involves a $2 differential over the highest class. So it's a manageable sum of money. And we did receive news from the union, the unit, that they have approved this sidebar agreement as of early this evening.
Sure.
Oh,
Do you
I'm sorry.
mind?
Yes,
Can I do
Counselor.
this one? Can I do this one? Move to approve a sidebar agreement between the City of Ellsworth and the Ellsworth Highway Department, Unit Local Number 327, Massachusetts, and Northern New England's Laborers District Council to allow an upgrade to a current highway worker position to a crew leader position.
Second. Seconds all over the place.
This harmony.
Motion and seconds in stereo. Any further discussion? Counselor Fournier.
Just a reminder that all our union contracts are going to need sidebars because the state has approved Indigenous People Day instead of Columbus Day. And if Columbus Day is listed as a...
That's critical news.
No, I'm just saying, while we're talking about union stuff here,
Yes.
So,
Motion and a second. Further discussion? I just want to make sure that has Bernie gotten permission to retire?
I haven't given it to him yet.
He hasn't,
Has
he's
it
been
been-
smiling the whole time.
Has it been approved?
Just so you know, behind your back.
Yeah.
All those-
I'm gonna suck his knowledge dry before he goes.
All those in favor? Unanimous.
There's other ways besides, well, never mind.
Go ahead, John, speak.
it's getting more and more like Fridays.
Gary, you haven't jumped in with,
Well,
never mind. I didn't see item 18. Item 18, council order number 051909, request of the city manager for approval of matching funds for an EID grant from the Northern Border Regional Commission to support improvements to the Water Street wastewater pump station and collection system.
Yeah. We've applied for a $500,000 grant through the Northern Borders Regional Commission. It's only once a year you can apply for this. They're going to be beginning to review these grant applications shortly. We need a commitment from the city council to the estimated $800,000 match that would follow. As in past practice, the council has made such commitments to come from future financings. Again, this is a mandatory project. It's going to have to be done. It'll be a lot more fun at only $800,000 in financing versus the entire $1.3 million. So I would strongly encourage you to approve or commit to the future match. I would note that the grant approvals are expected in August. The agreements probably won't be in place till September or even October, likely construction next year. So there's plenty of time to figure out the mechanics of that would come out of sewer rates and sewer revenues rather than general taxation.
councilors any questions or comments? Or a motion?
Oh, okay. Mr. Chair, I move to approve the request of the city manager to commit up to $800,000 as matching funds for a $500,000 grant from the Northern Border Regional Commission to support improvements to the Water Street wastewater, Water Street wastewater pump station and collection system. Funding for this match will come from future financing of the project.
Second.
Motion and a boisterous second. Further comments? Councilor
No, I'm
Foote.
voting.
Oh,
I thought you were going to say all those in favor.
all those in favor? Unanimous.
Motion to adjourn.
That's why I put it
Second.
last. so
Motion.
everybody would be more
All those in
done, but-
favor? Unanimous.
I'm
We're
having so
adjourned.
much fun.